State of the State.
Now more than ever, America needs California.
California making a statement in politics on a national level.
The State of the Union speech has been canceled by Nancy Pelosi.
The date of the State of the Union is not a sacred date. It is a date that we agreed to.
Tonight, an in-depth look at the Golden State's growing influence in Washington.
I've heard people out there call California kind of the resistance state compared to all the other states in our country. Would you agree with that?
Everything we do today, I guarantee in about 20 years, the rest of the country will be doing.
The major players to look out for.
I believe. Where are we on this presidential decision?
I'm going to make a decision soon.
And why your vote is especially important in next year's big election.
You still have a lot of hope?
Yes, I have a lot of hope.
This is State of the State.
And good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this KTVU Fox 2 News Special. I'm Alex Savidge.
And I'm Heather Holmes. California is, of course, the nation's most populous state, and the influence of the Golden State is certainly growing in Washington, D.C. For the next hour here on KTVU, we're going to explore how California is being put on the map with high-profile names in Congress and even one presidential candidate. We'll also hear from several state and Bay Area leaders who sat down with our KTVU anchors to talk about their goals and what they're going to do in the nation's capital for the people that they represent. Plus, we're also going to be talking about Republicans. They're in a rebuilding state here in California after the midterm election. I'll be hosting a live panel with prominent figures in the California Republican Party to go over what went wrong back in November and how they're working to move forward.
First, though, we want to talk about tonight's State of the Union address, where after a one-week delay, President Trump addressed the House Chamber of Congress, reminding lawmakers of the reason for the delay in this speech. That would be the government shutdown over funding for a border wall.
Now is the time for Congress to show the world that America is committed to ending illegal immigration and putting the ruthless coyotes, cartels, drug dealers, and human traffickers out of business. Thank you very much.
In his address, President Trump reminded Congress they have 10 days to pass a bill to secure the U.S.-Mexico border or risk another government shutdown. We'll have more on tonight's speech coming up on the 10 o'clock news.
Well, as the president lays out his plans for 2019, many Democrats are looking ahead to 2020. 10
big names have already announced their bid for the White House. That includes California Senator Kamala Harris, whose campaign raised a record $1.5 million in the first 24 hours of fundraising. And her journey from prosecutor to lawmaker to presidential candidate, it all started right here in Oakland. Kamala Harris's bid for the White House began right here in the Bay Area.
I am so proud to be a daughter of Oakland, California.
The 54-year-old senator was born in Oakland to an immigrant mother from India and an immigrant father from Jamaica. She grew up in Berkeley, where her parents studied at Cal. When Harris was 12, the family moved to Montreal. But after high school, she moved back to the U.S. to study law. And Harris began her career as a deputy district attorney in Alameda County.
I walked into the courtroom for the first time and said the 5 words that would guide my life's work. Kamala Harris, for the people.
After 8 years in the East Bay, Harris headed to San Francisco, first working in the district attorney's office, then later working for the city attorney. Then in 2003, a stunning victory for Harris. She was elected as San Francisco's district attorney, beating out the 2-term incumbent Terrence Hallinan in what was a bruising campaign. Harris was criticized at the time for her romance with then-Mayor Willie Brown. Harris's foray into politics highlighted a toughness and determination.
I'm running to fight for an America where our democracy and its institutions are protected against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
While working as the DA, Harris did face a backlash for declining to seek the death penalty for a gang member who shot and killed a police officer. Still in 2011, Harris moved on to statewide office, becoming California's Attorney General, the first African-American and woman to hold that post.
Please raise your right hand.
In 2017, Harris headed to Washington, D.C. as California's junior senator. And now, this daughter of Oakland has her sights set on the presidency. And with that, we would like to bring in our panel of experts who will be with us throughout this hour. We have, first of all, James Taylor, professor of political science at the University of San Francisco. Thanks for being here.
Yes, also joining us tonight is Melinda Jackson, political science professor there at San Jose State University. Thank you so much to both of you for being here. Melinda, I'm going to start with you. Kamala Harris, big, huge splash. I know it's early, but right now, is this her race to sort of lose?
Well, it is, but it's also very, very early. So whether it stays that way, we really can't make any solid predictions at this point. But yes, she's enjoying the limelight. I think it was smart for her to come out early. She's getting a lot of attention. She really does need to build her name recognition and her brand outside of California. She's pretty well known here, but she's, you know, now visiting places like Iowa and New Hampshire and, you know, really trying to build up her reputation in other parts of the country, as well as the all-important fundraising.
Why was her rollout so effective, do you think?
Well, you know, I think she is really capitalizing on a moment. Coming out of the 2018 midterms, it was another year of the woman. We had a record number of women elected to Congress. She's a woman of color, you know, coming from California, from this diverse background, as well as an experienced politician.
Well, we are hearing from some Bay Area lawmakers. They're giving their take on Kamala Harris's run. And right now, we want to go to Mike Thompson. He sat down with Ghazi Mikaelian.
We heard from Senator Kamala Harris announcing that she is formally seeking the presidency. What's your reaction? Are you for Kamala?
As a matter of fact, she called me before she made her announcement, told me she was going to do that, and asked for my 2 cents. And obviously, I weighed in, and my opinion was worth probably just about 2 cents. But I think that she is an excellent public servant. She's doing a great job in the Senate. I work closely with her. She's a great attorney general, and I think she would be a real asset to lead our country. So I'm glad she's in, and I encourage all the great candidates we have to get out and meet the voters and put your best foot forward. And I'm looking forward to electing a Democrat in 2020.
Right there you have it, North Bay Congressman Mike Thompson, James, sort of talking about his support, at least for Kamala Harris's candidacy. But let's talk a little bit about her vulnerabilities. Obviously, a lot of support right now. But what are her vulnerabilities?
I would say part of her big challenge is going to be mobilization. Trying to get African Americans behind her in terms of enthusiasm of the sort you saw behind Obama or even a Jesse Jackson back in the 80s, where there's a sense that this is ours, is a sense of common view in terms of ideology. The real challenge she has is the same problem that Eric Holder would have if he decided to run, that they were law enforcement officers first. And in the Black Lives Matter moment here in the Bay Area, where this all originates in terms of the politics of it, it's the irony and the challenge she has of mobilizing young people who I think had an effect on the enthusiasm gap for even Hillary Clinton for the same issue around law enforcement issues, around law enforcement reform. If you remember, Bernie and Hillary on the campaign trail were confronted by young activists. And I think Kamala Harris has a bunch of that coming, a lot of confrontation where she's going to have to give accountability for some of the speeches she's given, some of the policy positions she's taken here in the state and in the city of San Francisco. So again, it's not that people won't get behind her. If you've watched since 2016, the African-American vote has been the #1 vote for Hillary. Was African-American women. #2 was African-American men. The Alex Jones election, African-American women, African-American men. You look at all 3 elections in Texas, Georgia, and Florida, African-American women and men had a 10% difference between each other. There's a real dynamic here that Kamala Harris is going to have to reconcile in terms of mobilizing people. Again, Hillary should have gotten 92, 93, 94% of the black vote. She got about 88%. That's what's going to happen to Kamala unless she can fix this. It's not that they won't support her 1 and 2. They just won't support her 1 and 2 enthusiastically.
Yeah. And Senator Harris, we should point out, not the only Californian it would look like with an eye on the White House. KTVU's Claudine Wong sat down and spoke with East Bay Congressman Eric Swalwell. He, of course, has been rumored to be considering a presidential run.
Where are we on this presidential decision?
I'm going to make a decision soon, Claudine. Thank you for asking. I will be in Iowa, in New Hampshire in the next couple of weeks, continuing to talk to folks there. But I'm doing it because I think I can make a difference. I'm connected to everyday folks. I'm, the first in my family to go to college. I saw grit and want growing up. I come from a part of the country that believes when you go big, be bold, and do good, that everyone can benefit, but understands that fulfillment, that promise of America has not been fulfilled everywhere. So that's why I would do it. It's a family decision at this point, but as to whether I can make a difference and whether I could win, I think I've answered those questions. It's just whether it's the best for our family right now.
You've got Kamala Harris.
All right, so it would seem as though Congressman Swalwell is going to potentially jump into this very crowded field of Democrats. What do you think about him sort of standing out from this crowd here?
Well, I think he will have a challenge, and he's been contemplating this run for a while. He's a young guy, he has a couple of terms in Congress, not again as well known throughout the country, and given the field that we're seeing shaping up so far with some pretty big names, Elizabeth Warren,
Cory Booker,
I think it will be a challenge for him to really distinguish himself.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you both weighing in here. Stay with us here because our coverage is just getting started here. And coming up after the break, Californians in Congress. The familiar faces leading the House on both sides of the aisle. Plus, a message from San Francisco's own Nancy Pelosi after she reclaimed the gavel.
Leader McCarthy, I look forward to working with you in a bipartisan way for the good of our country.
Also, a Republican roundtable is coming up next. I'm going to sit down with some of the Bay Area's prominent GOP figures to talk about the state of the party after losing ground during the midterms.
Welcome back to this KTVU Fox 2 News special. From one Californian to another, San Francisco's own Nancy Pelosi taking back the gavel last month from Republican Kevin McCarthy from Bakersfield as Democrats regained the majority in the House of Representatives. And in her first address in this new term, the House Speaker acknowledged the city she represents.
I want to thank my constituents from San Francisco who have entrusted me to represent them in Congress in the spirit of St. Francis, the patron saint of San Francisco, and his song of St. Francis is our anthem, "Make me a channel of thy peace." We heard that in church this morning, but it is our mission.
House Minority Leader McCarthy was quick to address the shift in Congress right after the midterm elections.
We serve in a divided government and a divided country. Our goal is to unite us back together again.
And here's how those midterms played out in the House. Republicans suffering a crushing defeat, losing 40 seats to Democrats and giving up control of the House.
Okay, here in California, the midterms meant more bad news for Republicans as Democrats cemented their supermajorities in both state and legislative chambers and also swept statewide offices. So just what is next for the Republican Party? For more on that, I'm joined by some of the Bay Area's top Republican leaders. Matt Shoup, chairman of the Contra Costa Republican Party, Corinne Rankin, former Trump campaign surrogate and candidate for vice chair of the California Republican Party, and Bill Whalen, research fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. Thank you all for being here tonight. Bill, I'm going to start with you, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time looking back, but boy, it was a crushing defeat for Republicans back in November. The party really got taken by surprise. A number of House seats flipped, 7 of them. my first question is, how do Republicans recover from that?
They're not going to recover overnight. It's a simple answer. It's not like the pendulum's going to switch back into 2020 and put Republicans back in. I think the party has to be a lot more introspective about the business of getting Republicans elected and stop looking at the top of the ticket and look further down, Heather, and look into city races and county DA races. The Republican Party needs a bench. You look northern, southern California, central California, there's always a challenge to get good, experienced Republicans to run. So I think that's what the GOP has to do now, build a farm team.
Matt, when you sort of reevaluate the strategy, what is sort of the path moving forward there in Contra Costa County?
Well, I agree with Bill. We need to build that farm team up, and we can. There's actually a lot of Republicans elected here in the Bay Area, but importantly, we also need to have a narrative and a message. I think we've lacked that for the last few years, and we need to focus on giving people a reason to vote for us rather than the fact that we just vote against things. And we need to come up with a cohesive narrative and message and reason to vote for us and a viable alternative that I don't feel we've had for a while.
All three of you are shaking your head. Yes. Corinne, you are hoping to become a state party leader. As you sort of sit back and you look at all of the obstacles that the Republican Party has to overcome, what is sort of priority number one?
Like they both said, we need to unite our party, and we need to build a farm team and start working to get candidates elected. When I look at the CRP on a statewide level, I look at it with optimism. I see that we have a lot of candidates running throughout the state, a lot of up-and-coming new candidates. You know, there's a new generation of Republicans that are up and coming, and it's time for that. It's time for us to, you know, change our messaging, and we need to do a better job of getting our message out there of opportunity for Californians.
And when you talk about sort of broadening your appeal, is that tactics, is it policies, is it both?
It's both. Like I said, there's a lot of new Republicans coming up. There are a lot of minorities that are running for office just throughout the state of California, and it's really time to, you know, lift them up and help them, you know, win their elections. And it's time for us to start giving everyone a seat at the table.
It sort of is a different position that Republicans find themselves in here in California. Matt, it was not that long ago that California Republicans were dominant. What do you attribute that decline to? Is it demographics?
I think it's demographics. I also think there's some complacency as well. I think that we haven't evolved our tactics and techniques in a while, and I think that we need to be much more forward-thinking in how we form our strategy and our tactics, how we run these campaigns, the candidates we recruit, where we run them. And I think I think our losses give us an opportunity to really, as Bill said, be introspective and try to devise new ways to be competitive in this state. And I think that only being in the position we're in would actually give us a broader opportunity to do that rather than being kind of on the margins.
Okay, sounds like you're a little bit optimistic. But Bill, we heard from Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Leader, and he too acknowledged the steep losses, saying, quote, and I want to bring up what he said. He said, we're going to have to work harder. I think our message is going to have to be clear. Our ideas are going to have to be stronger. Can McCarthy craft a plan to sort of bring back the Republican Party to the majority in 2020?
I think there are two things. First of all, he's going to have to learn how to work around the president. Donald Trump is a toxic brand in California. I'm sorry, he got 31% of the vote in 2016, the worst for Republican era since Alf Landon in 1936. He's still that unpopular in polls right now. I think he's going to have to allow Republicans in California the freedom to break away from the National Party writ large, if you will, to move on the environment, for example, to move on education, and maybe take a softer stance on taxation. Matt referred to this. Republicans have not been very good at messaging in this state. We've become very good at saying no to things, but not very good at offering an alternate vision. I think that's what Republicans have to do.
Corinne, do you agree? Is this sort of an opportunity to move away from Donald Trump and perhaps maybe even move a little bit more to the center?
I think we should be a big tent party. There's room for everyone in the Republican Party. There's room for people who support the president, for people who disagree with him, and otherwise. We need to start being more welcoming and being a bigger tent party. We're the party of, you know, diversity of thought.
Right, and I'd add one thing to that, Heather, in that the president has to start recognizing California. To the extent he recognizes California, it's spitballing tweets against Gavin Newsom and picking fights about San Francisco and Nancy Pelosi. He needs to be sending cabinet secretaries out to California. California. Traditionally, presidents after the State of the Union, they dispatch their cabinet around the country and sell the message. He should be sending people out to California and talking about the economy, plain and simple. Own the economy. He talked about the economy in the first 10 minutes of the speech. It's a good story to tell. Send people out here to tell the story. It'll make them feel a little better about Republicans.
Matt, last word.
I think that there's a happy medium. See, the thing is, there's been a lot of economic growth in the country, but a lot of Californians, if you don't live in San Francisco, you don't live on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, you're not feeling that. And so I think that's one of the distinguishing points between like the John Cox for Governor campaign and these congressional campaigns is that the point here is the California Republicans can distinguish themselves from Trump. We don't have to necessarily condemn him, but by coming up with our own policy initiatives, our own, ideas that focus on California, improving the quality of life here, and our way of life doesn't, necessarily translate to Wisconsin and building factories, but we need to be focused on California, improving our quality of life here.
Matt, Corinne, Bill, appreciate it. Thank you so much. It remains to be seen just how much the California Republican Party can rebuild. Appreciate your time. Alex?
All right, Heather, good discussion. And with all that momentum from the midterms, Democrats are hoping to push their policies forward. KTVU's Garcia Michaelian spoke with North Bay Congressman Jared Huffman about that shift in power.
It's a huge change. I've spent the last 6 years, in a sense, in the political wilderness. I've been in the minority. Congress is a very majoritarian institution, a bit of an eye-opener for me because I served 6 years in the State Assembly and it wasn't quite that way. But it's a partisan place, Washington, D.C., and if you're in the minority party, especially for these last few years, it's frustrating.
How do you plan to use your new Democratic power?
Well, first of all, we're going to do something that we've sorely needed but haven't had any of in the last 2 years. We're going to provide oversight of this administration and all of the corruption and scandals that, unfortunately, a Republican Congress simply didn't want to acknowledge. So that's a huge part of what we'll do. We'll provide accountability and a check on power. That's the way our government was set up to function. And we're also going to change the policy agenda. We're going to start moving things forward in ways we haven't seen on infrastructure, on reducing health care costs, hopefully on a lot of other big things.
You said you want to leverage your power. How do you plan to do that?
You do it through the oversight process, through the accountability that congressional hearings, sometimes involving subpoenas, if necessary, can bring. We will shine a spotlight on all of this corruption in the Trump administration.
We heard some bipartisan talk from the president.
Great.
What's your reaction?
I encourage that. I always welcome that bipartisan talk, but action is a lot more important. And so now what I hope the president does, let Congress do its work. We can get there.
All right, coming up here on this special Making History in Washington.
Coming up after the break, our own Frank Somerville asked Oakland Congresswoman Barbara Lee about her goals and priorities as the only woman of color in a leadership role at the Capitol.
I have a heck of a lot of hope.
Welcome back, everyone, to this KTVU Fox 2 News special. East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee is making history at the nation's capital.
As co-chair of the Steering and Policy Committee, she is the first woman of color in a leadership role in Congress. She's also one of 17 House and Senate members negotiating a deal on border security right now for the federal government. Our own Frank Somerville sat down with the Congresswoman to talk about her goals.
What role does California have? We have a new governor. He has Democrats controlling the state Senate, the state assembly. We have 2 Democratic senators. We have many Democratic members of Congress. What role do you see California playing when it comes to the future of this country?
California has always played a leading role on so many issues. When you look at, for example, climate change, and California has moved forward with our own climate initiatives. Thank goodness here in California we still have strong environmental laws to make sure that our water is clean and that our air is, the air quality is such that people don't have to worry like they have to worry in other places about air quality, and so it's extremely important.
You've been representing the Bay Area now for years. What's important to Congresswoman Barbara Lee?
When you look at equal justice under the law and when you look at equality, one of the goals I have is to help reduce poverty and help move forward on addressing income inequality. This has been so hard for so many people who have been left behind. And when you look at poverty rates, for example, in my own district, I believe it's 20% or more of African American children live below the poverty line. When you look at the income gap and the wealth gap as it relates to people of color, $46,000 maybe the average income for an African American family, whereas in the Bay Area I believe maybe $117,000 for a white family. So we've got to close those gaps. And so much of my life has been about fighting for justice and for equality on all fronts. And poverty elimination really is what I see as a high priority and has been in terms of my fight for equality and for justice for everyone.
When you think about the country, when you think about California, you still have a lot of hope?
Yes, I have a lot of hope. When I travel around the country helping candidates win elections, and I do that quite a bit, I see young people with a lot of hope. And I think it's my job and others who have been in Congress a while to really work with these young people. I mean, now, look, we have like 100 and some women who have been elected to Congress. 40% of the new women on the Democratic side are women of color. We have 55 new members of the Black Caucus. We have 39 members now of the Hispanic Caucus. We have a large Asian Pacific American caucus. We have over 100 members of the Progressive Caucus. I mean, this reflects the sentiment of the country of coming together, of trying to work within a political system to make things better. So I have a heck of a lot of hope.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee. All right, coming up here, a familiar face with a very familiar message.
We will offer an alternative to the corruption and the incompetence in the White House. We will offer an alternative to the corruption and the incompetence in the White House. Our government will be progressive, principled, and always on the side of the people. This will take courage. And I know courage is a word that means different things to different people, but for me, courage means doing what is right even when it is hard. That will be the foundational mission of our administration. We will be California for all.
And that is former San Francisco mayor, now California governor, Gavin Newsom, vowing to fight the policies of the Trump administration in his inaugural address less than 1 month ago. The message, of course, isn't entirely new. Former Governor Jerry Brown was also known to fight the policies of the Trump administration as well. And Governor Newsom, however, says that that will be his focus first and foremost. We want to bring back in our panel here, Melinda Jackson from San Jose State University and James Taylor from San Francisco State University.
USF.
Oh, I'm sorry, USF. I beg your pardon. I know. Blasphemy. Let's talk about Governor Newsom, and you know he talks about pushing back against the Trump administration and its policies. What do we think that is going to look like? What areas will he focus on?
Yeah, well, I think if you remember Jerry Brown, he had said during the 2016 campaign that California would be sort of the border and it would be the sort of wall against Trump. I think that Gavin Newsom will try to continue those policies, mainly through Javier Becerra and his ability, where he's on many fronts sued the Trump administration countless times, more than any other attorney general in the country other than New York. So in a lot of ways, I think those policies will continue on, although I do think, as you heard just now, Gavin Newsom will speak more bluntly and forthrightly as a counter to the Trump message here in the state of California in ways that Jerry Brown tried to, I think, very trepidatiously be careful. He showed a lot of respect for the office, even though he obviously did not agree with the man. So I think that's what you're going to see is issues of environment, the border wall, the whole question of National Guard and the use of California Guard. Jerry Brown agreed with it and supported it. Will Gavin Newsom support it? And that might be a point of tension for them.
Melinda, when we sort of look at the role of California politicians, we have some very powerful lawmakers that have a lot of influence in the nation's capital. How much does California politics play in national politics?
Well, I think an important role and growing. After all, Nancy Pelosi is, again, the Speaker, and we have the largest delegation in the House, 53 representatives, the majority of whom are Democrats. So particularly in the Democratic Party, California Democrats are playing a huge role in Washington, not to mention now chairing important committees, moving into those leadership roles. So, you know, I think California is really going to be quite a focus of attention over the next couple years.
Many of those lawmakers you talk about, Representative Adam Schiff heading up the Intelligence Committee, Maxine Waters heading up the Financial Services Committee, they have a tremendous amount of power, don't they, James?
A lot of subpoena power. And they've been very disciplined not to go after Trump's taxes immediately. I think that's what you see. Trump is probably pushing back inside the bureaucracy, but the Democrats are showing discipline not to show the country this sort of rush to judgment to quickly sort of go right after Trump's taxes, although there have been some requests. Nancy Pelosi's not leading that charge, and when she leads the charge, it will matter. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others, of course, are going to sort of try to hold the president accountable on other fronts, but the big thing is, I think, the president's taxes, and the Democrats are showing the country discipline. I think what Nancy Pelosi has given the Democrats is a model of disciplined leadership. Around the midterms, she kept them on message around pre-existing conditions, not Donald Trump. And if they follow that model, it might be successful in 2020.
Well, let's hear what California Senator Kamala Harris had to say about California. This was what she had to say on the day that she announced that she is, in fact, running for president.
Here's what I would say about California. I am a proud daughter of Oakland, California. And I also know that in that state of almost 40 million people, that the state is as diverse as our country is. We produce half the fruits and vegetables consumed by the United States in California. We have red areas, we have blue areas, we have purple areas. We have a whole collection of folks who span every demographic that a pollster would talk about. So California is a diverse state. I will also say this. I've traveled our country, and I know, again, I know that regardless of the state in which someone lives, the core issues that are their concerns, that weigh on them, that cause them to wake up in the middle of the night, are usually the same concerns, regardless of where they live. It is usually a concern about how they're going to pay those bills. How are they going to pay the rent? Are they going to be able to retire with dignity? Can they pay off those student loans? These are universal issues. And here's what I would say as a final point on that. We are a diverse country, yes. And some people would suggest that in diversity, when there is a diverse population, one cannot achieve unity. I reject that notion, because this is my belief. Yes, we are diverse, and we have so much more in common than what separates us. And when we emphasize that commonality, when we recognize that commonality, we will achieve greater unity. And in particular, greater unity than we have right now, where there are so many powerful voices who are trying to sow hate and division among us. We have got to reject that. It is not reflective of who we are as Americans, and it is not in our best interest. Our unity has always been our strength, and our strength is our unity. I feel that very strongly.
Yeah, California Senator Kamala Harris with some strong words there. Melissa and James, you're going to stay with us. We're going to continue our conversation in just a moment. But in the meantime, challenging the president. Coming up next, our own Mike Meback sits down with Javier Becerra to talk about his efforts to push back against several controversial policies.
California's laws have withstood challenges, including by the federal government, and we will enforce those. That's my job.
Welcome back, everyone, to this KTVU Fox 2 News special. One of the most divisive topics between California and Washington has been about immigration, with President Trump pushing for more secure borders to keep undocumented immigrants out of the country. And one case the president has pointed to is the killing of Newman police officer Ronell Singh. He was shot and killed during a traffic stop the morning after Christmas.
Where he was shot, viciously shot, for simply stopping a person that came over the border illegally. Got shot, killed, and took the most beautiful picture just hours before, Christmas picture. We don't want that happening.
Well, the president later met with Corporal Singh's brother to push for a border wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
California Attorney General Javier Becerra is pushing back against the president's plan to build a wall along the border. KTVU's Mike Meback got a chance to sit down with the Attorney General to talk about that issue and several others facing Californians today.
First of all, let me just say, welcome, Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. It is 2019. What is your #1 goal this year?
We protect Californians. My job is to protect you, the 40 million Californians, our values, and our resources. Job one. And so public safety has to be top of mind, making sure that we're working in partnership with local law enforcement, with our federal law enforcement partners, to make sure that you can send your kids safely to school, you can return home safely, and that you feel good that you can live and work in California.
This year we have a new governor in California, albeit no stranger to you, as Gavin Newsom served as our state's lieutenant governor prior to his new role. What's your relationship with Governor Newsom, and do you foresee being able to accomplish more with a Governor Newsom than, say, a Governor Brown?
Well, I've got a great relationship with our new governor. He's hit the ground running, and as I continue to say to him, keep California forward-leaning, and I've got your back.
Do you think you can get more accomplished with Governor Newsom there in office?
The great thing about California is we're a state on the move. Look at what we accomplished with Governor Brown. Clearly, Gavin Newsom is a governor with a lot of great ideas, and I suspect he's not going to take his foot off the pedal, so I just want to make sure we keep up with him.
Based on my reading, you've filed about 70 briefs, dozens of lawsuits against the Trump administration, mostly targeting environmental, also immigration policies. Now, I've heard people out there call California kind of the resistance state compared to all the other states in our country. Would you agree with that?
The way I classify it is California is the country's most forward-leaning state. Everything we do today, I guarantee in about 20 years, the rest of the country will be doing.
For those who say that this is the state of resistance, they kind of think you, as the Attorney General of the state, you know, is the face of it. Do you feel like you have become the face of this, in their words, resistance?
We're clearly going to resist any efforts to keep California from moving towards universal health care for its people, from treating all families, including immigrant families, with dignity, from fighting to maintain the most progressive gun safety laws in the nation. For me, as Attorney General, I see my job as making sure California keeps the pedal to the metal, and we continue to do all the things that have created more jobs in California than any other place in the nation, and that keeps us moving forward.
Let me talk about, or ask you about, California as a sanctuary state. It's been in the news recently. The sheriff of Stanislaus County, Adam Christensen, has said that Corporal Ronil Singh from Newman would probably be alive today if California was not a sanctuary state. How do you react to a statement like that? And do you agree with it?
There's no doubt that we have to do everything, and certainly as a chief law enforcement officer of the state, one of my principal responsibilities is to make sure that we are providing public safety to all Californians. As I said, that's job one. And so anyone who wants to commit criminal activity, anyone, regardless of your background, we're going to go after you, and we should.
The sheriff says the man accused of this crime is an illegal immigrant who had been arrested twice before for DUI, and that he should not have been here.
As I said, if you are an undocumented immigrant in this country and you commit a crime, or whether you're a seventh-generation American citizen and you commit a crime, law enforcement should go after you.
You will continue to defend the bulk of our sanctuary laws here, moving forward.
California's laws have withstood challenges, including by the federal government, and we will enforce those. That's my job. I take an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution of the state and our laws.
When I bring up white-collar crime, elder abuse, human and sex trafficking, combating the opioid epidemic going on, any of those top of your list here in 2019 or moving forward?
Yes, 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 yes.
Senator Kamala Harris recently announced that she is going to run for the White House. She wants to be the next president of the United States. Do you support her? Were you surprised by her announcement?
I think Senator Harris is going to give everyone a chance to see who she is and prove that she could be a great candidate for president. It's early on right now.
So you weren't surprised? Or maybe you were surprised by her announcement.
Not surprised. I wish her well as she moves forward. I haven't decided what role I'll play in this whole process, but I know that she's going to make a mark.
For some reason, in a couple of years, let's just say Senator Harris becomes the President of the United States. Would you be interested in being a U.S. Senator here in California, taking her seat?
Ooh. So those are all those speculation questions.
That is a speculation
Yeah, that is. And I've learned not to speculate a long time ago, and I will tell you this. This is the first time in 28 years that I have had a chance to be elected to a position where I don't have to be on the ballot in 2 more years. Because for 26 years I served in Congress and in the state legislature, 2-year terms. I'm going to do everything I can with this 4-year term to prove to people that their vote of confidence was well placed. And I'm going to work as hard as I can as Attorney General for as long as the voters in California let me.
I mean, what keeps you going? What do you love about your job?
I'm in a position where I get to make a difference. Why would I want to be anywhere else? I'm the first in my family to get to go to college. I'm seeing things that my parents could only dream of. I'm not going to take that for granted. I'm going to play it to the hilt because I'm doing things that no one in my family, extended family, could have ever believed someone in my lifetime would get to do. So make the most of it. And at my stage in life, I'm no longer that newbie. I'm no longer someone who has little experience. If I'm not willing to take some chances, some risks to do what I think is important, then I shouldn't be in the position.
California Attorney General Javier Becerra. Coming up, reaching across the aisle. Coming up, East Bay Congressman Mike DeSaulnier sits down with our Andre Sr. to talk about a divided Congress and how he, a former Republican, hopes to get things done despite differences.
I left the Republican Party 20 years ago because it was getting too far right and too extreme.
Welcome back to this KTVU Fox 2 News special. With Congress now divided, lawmakers face the challenge of working together to address the issues.
And KTVU's Andre Sr. recently sat down with East Bay Congressman Mark DeSaulnier to find out more about what it'll take to make progress at the nation's capital.
You were a former Republican, many, many years ago. The party might have been different then, but is there anything from back then that you can use now to reach across the aisles?
I work with my Republican colleagues all the time. I've had almost 30 pieces of legislation in the 4 years I've been there that have passed out of the House that required Republican support. So on a lot of things we can work together. I left the Republican Party 20 years ago because it was getting too far right and too extreme. So you've got to be able to negotiate for all of the citizens of the country, not just for a particular block of them.
Climate change, an issue that we've seen some people say might be threatened by some of the ideas from President Trump to deregulate certain industries here. What do you see going forward with Democrats in charge of the House?
Well, we're going to introduce an aggressive climate change proposal.
What do you plan?
We're going to have to make sure that we want to go back into the Paris Accords, which he left, but we need to make targets. We need to transition our mobile fleet away from fossil fuels to alternative fuels, so battery electric. I was on the Air Resources Board. I served 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat for 10 years. California has been bipartisan in this way. California started air pollution control before the federal government did because of our air pollution issues. We have been incredibly innovative. We have led the world in California. Both Governors Wilson, Governor Davis, Governor Schwarzenegger, Governor Brown, now Governor Newsom have all been very, very aggressive about climate change and pollution in general.
Just over 72,000 students are enrolled in public universities in California, DACA recipients. Are you guys willing to take up the mantle on that again in 2019?
We are willing, and we really want to take up DACA. All those kids are doing the right thing. We've been encouraging them to continue to go to school, to get good jobs. They're contributing to the economy. They're some of the best and the brightest in our UC systems. So we want to protect them, and we want to give them a pathway to citizenship.
What do you see Democrats doing to use the power effectively that they now have in the House?
We have the largest delegation. California is the largest state, 53 members. One of the big ways we use it is oversight, holding on the Constitution, making sure that the president is not abusing the Constitution, which I think he does regularly.
What do you want to say to people of California right now as we head in to this new Congress, this new power that Democrats have in the House, and with an administration that seems to be at odds with California? What do you want to say to those people?
I want to say thank you. California is leading this country in the world. I was pretty depressed before this election, and then Americans got out to vote across the country. Women got out to vote. Minorities got out to vote. And what it showed me was democracy can work if we all are engaged. And California led the charge. We have the most diverse, not only the biggest delegation in Congress, but the most reflective of the general population. And that's because people got out and vote. So thank you.
Yeah, Mark DeSaulnier reflecting on the midterms there. He also said that he left the Republican Party because he felt like it was getting too far to the right, too extreme. I'm joined once again by our experts, James and Melinda. And I want to go to you, Melinda. Some now would argue that the Democrats are too far to the left and too extreme.
Well, the thing about having just two major parties in this country is that each of them really includes a broad range of different factions. So whereas you saw the Tea Party movement, really come to prominence in the Republican Party a few years ago, we are seeing the progressive wing of the Democratic Party more ascendant now. So it's also a little bit of a generational shift. We've got some younger, new members in the Democratic Party who aren't afraid to challenge the leadership and to, really make their voices heard. So I would say that we're definitely seeing some momentum pushing the Democratic Party to the left right now.
In a broader sense, I'm curious about this. We talk about party leaders, Democratic Party leaders here in California being sort of locked into this fight with the Trump administration over policy. Is there a risk at all to Californians to, sort of getting too hyper-focused on the president?
Yeah, and that's why I think Nancy Pelosi, as I said the last segment, it represents outstanding leadership so far. What she's demonstrated, what she's modeled, is what Democrats at the local level and national level have to sort of consider: policies, policies, policies. Even the Republicans began to talk about pre-existing conditions. She was so effective. And Donald Trump ran against Nancy Pelosi. Let's be clear, the midterm elections, Nancy Pelosi was the face of the opposition, and yet she, the whole idea of coming around to her position, the president even said tonight in his State of the Union, I support pre-existing conditions. Why? Because Nancy Pelosi has kept everyone focused on issues, and I think if Democrats are focused on issues where the polls and town halls sort of reveal what people are committed to, then that's where the Democrats are going to win.
But, here at home in California, we are facing an affordability crisis. There is a housing crisis. There is an issue with homelessness. And, I mean, is there a risk in getting too distracted over here with the president?
Well, I think there are some real challenges here in California, and that housing crisis is number one. The growing income inequality, the growing number of homeless folks here in the state, and as well as issues like health care and education. And I think these are going to be the challenges more so for the governor right now. But as much as, this fight continues between California and the Trump administration, that will be distracting from some of those important problems here at home.
And James, when we sort of look at Democrats and Republicans here in the state, I mean, I spent some time talking with some GOP leaders, and they're looking to re-strategize. But what sort of happened to Republicans in the state? And do you believe that there is going to be a sort of resurgence, if you will, of the GOP?
Well, what happened to the Republicans really was the 2012, I think the 2010 election. In the state of California, at the very time the Tea Party was ascendant nationally, in the state of California, Republicans became very considerably weakened. So I think it's a messaging issue. It's an issue, as the segment suggested, but it's also an issue of the demographic transformation of this state. It happened to Bob Dornan down in Orange County, where he didn't know Loretta Sanchez was a reflection of the demographic changes in his own district, and I think that's what is happening statewide. Is the Republican Party is out of step with the, demographics.
We have to leave it there. We appreciate it. James Taylor from the University of San Francisco.
Holmes. And Melinda Jackson from San Jose State University. Thank you both for coming in.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for joining us for this KTVU Fox 2 News Special. Our political coverage continues next with the 10 o'clock news. We'll break down President Trump's State of the Union address tonight, the Democratic response, plus expert analysis. Again, that's coming up next, right here on the 10 o'clock news. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us.